Hello everyone, my name is Mary Margaret and today I'm going to be talking with you about my TBR for the Leading Ladies Readathon that I am co-hosting with Kara from Wild Book Garden and Taylor from Page Screen Taylor. I'm going to link all of the information about this readathon down below as well as the channels of Kara and Taylor, so please do go check them out as soon as you can. I highly recommend their videos. They are just awesome people all around, so please do take the time to do that. I'm a little bit late to filming this TBR, and that is because I had some random school assignments that were kind of given to me a little bit late in the game of the semester, and so I only have one assignment left in my class and it's due tomorrow, so I am finally going to be able to actually participate for real in the readathon after today, and I'm going to hopefully start some other things in terms of the readathon today anyway, just because it's good to take breaks from studying and all of that. And so I'm going to be talking with you about all of the different prompts as well as what I've chosen for those prompts, and I hope you will enjoy the video. As I said in the announcement video for this readathon, you can absolutely combine prompts and you can also choose as many or as few of the prompts to follow, so feel free to do whatever you feel like doing. Alright, so I'm going to talk about the different prompts and what I've chosen. I have my computer here, so if you see me looking down, it is because of that. So this particular readathon installment is going to be centered around one of my favorite actresses, Audrey Hepburn, and it's going to be split into two different sections. So one is about life challenges, so it has to do with Audrey Hepburn's life, and then the other part has to do with her movies. The first prompt is, as a young girl living in the Nazi-occupied Netherlands, Audrey performed silent dance shows to raise money for the Dutch resistance. Read a book with a strong female character whose strength is not physical. Now, funnily enough, I actually was considering reading a book about Joan of Arc, and I couldn't decide, and then I watched Kara's TBR, and she had chosen one about her. And so I decided to pick up one that Kara recommended. I think it was last year that she talked about this, and it's called Voices, The Final Hours of Joan of Arc by David Eliot. And if I remember correctly, it is a book that takes place or is written in verse. So I'm excited to dig into that because I do enjoy poetry and things along those lines. And I think Joan of Arc is fascinating and inspiring. And I wanted to look a little bit more closely at her life. So this will be a perfect opportunity to do that, as well as reading a book that Kara recommended. Definitely trust her taste, so I'm sure it'll be great. The next prompt is, Audrey was a fashion icon throughout her career and was especially fond of Hubert de Givenchy's designs. Read a book by a favorite author or an author you love. It can be either or it can be a combination of the two. For this prompt, I chose the only full-length Jane Austen novel that I have not read yet, which is really surprising, I know, because Jane Austen is one of my favorite authors of all time, and I don't really know why I've never read this book. Well, that's not true. I think there are a few reasons, but I'll talk about that whenever I review it. But I'm really excited to be reading this, and I did start this earlier this year, and now I'm finally going to take the time and the focus to actually finish it. The book I'm going to read for that prompt is Emma by Jane Austen, and this is a really interesting one to read for me because I have seen so many adaptations of this, and I've been wanting to see the 2020 adaptation for it, but I just haven't gotten around to it yet, and so hopefully I will finish reading this soon so that I can watch the 2020 adaptation as a celebration. This edition is quite interesting, I know, and it's very beaten up, and that's because I bought it for sale used at the library in my hometown, so it's quite old. I've had it since I was about 14, I think, if that. I'm enjoying it so far, but it is a very frustrating book in other ways, so I'm sure I'll talk about that later on. Emma is a book about Emma Woodhouse, and she's kind of a spoiled, rich girl who decides that she wants to play matchmaker to everyone that she knows who is single, and she has a successful match that has taken place before this particular book starts, and so what she decides to do is have a match made with a new friend that she has, and basically chaos ensues, and Emma kind of has to learn that she can't meddle with people's lives. That's all I can really say without spoiling anything. I feel like with Jane Austen books, it's best to go in without any clue what's going to happen, so I don't want to say anything else too much. The third prompt is, in her later years, Audrey Hepburn became very active in social causes current to her time. In honor of our current time, Native American Heritage Month, read a book by an Indigenous author. They don't have to be an author from the US. Though the prompts are pick and choose, we strongly encourage participants to complete the previous prompt. Currently, there is a readathon that is taking place that is called Indigathon, and it is all about reading different works from Indigenous authors. Their links are below for their channels where they're talking about what they're going to read or any other book recommendations that they have. So my book that I chose to read for this particular prompt is from Michelle at Thor Wants Another Letter, and this book is called Black Sun by Rebecca Roanhorse. This is a science fiction book that I know very little about. I wanted to go into it completely clueless, and so I've been listening to the audiobook for this, and so far I'm really enjoying it, but I'm also very lost, which is why I hardly ever read science fiction, is because I generally get so confused with all of the different characters and the world building and everything. But so far it's very well written and I'm enjoying it a lot, so I'm just hoping I can catch up and figure out what's going on pretty soon. But I'm not too far into it yet, so that's probably part of the problem. But it's going very well so far, and like I said, we are all really strongly recommending and encouraging everyone to take part in this particular prompt for the readathon, and to also take part of Indigathon if you are able to do so. Now we're going to move on to the movie challenges. So these prompts are based on different films that Audrey Hepburn was in. The first one is Roman Holiday. Read a book you think will give you a lot of feelings. One of my favorite operas of all time is Eugene Onegin by Tchaikovsky, and it's just one that I have pretty much memorized, and I really enjoy listening to it and watching it when I can. And it is based on a particular novel in verse by Alexander Pushkin, and this is one that was introduced to me by my older sisters, and I just love it. So I wanted to reread it for this particular prompt because it always makes me a little bit emotional. So I have this beautiful edition that I found secondhand, and I just love it. If you haven't noticed, I like to buy secondhand books. I like to think of it as rescuing books from getting, completely neglected. So this is the edition, has this beautiful spine, and then there's a sleeve. And when I take it out of the sleeve, this is what you can see. And it has these beautiful illustrations in it. I'll see if I can find one for you to see. This would be an easy book to read for sure because it's quite short since it is in verse. Yes, here we go. So these are some of the illustrations. And it smells amazing because this is kind of an older book, but I won't sit here sniffing it in a video. That's probably a little bit strange to see. I just really wanted to reread this and just listen to the opera while I do so, and I thought this would be a perfect opportunity to do that, and it would be a practical idea because it won't take me too long to read. Eugene Onegin is a story that is all about first loves and not having second chances at first love, and basically the fickleness of man and woman, really. And I really hate to say anything else because that's spoilery, so I don't know what else to say, just read it. Another choice I have for Roman Holiday, read a book you think will give you a lot of feelings, is The Lovely War by Julie Berry. This is one that has been recommended by Kara from Wild Book Garden again, and then also from Julia from Shakespeare and Such, both of whom I just trust implicitly about their taste in books, and it sounds incredible. This is one I recently purchased so that I could read it very, very soon, so if I have time, I would like to read it. It does look like it's quite long, but it's also very large text, so I don't think it would be too difficult to get through, and from what I've heard, it's not difficult to get through because it's such a wonderful book. This particular one I, again, don't know too much about. I try not to know too much about things before I get into it. This story tells the fates of a lot of different people during World War I and World War II, and it's told, partially at least, by different Greek gods and goddesses, which is really interesting. I'm probably not explaining this very well, but like I said, I try to keep my mind open by not knowing much about it beforehand, and I'm excited to dig into this one very soon. The next prompt is Sabrina. Read a book you think will have some serious character development. This one is going to be combined with an earlier prompt, and I am putting Emma as the response to that prompt, and that is because Emma changes quite a lot from the beginning to the end of this story. Even though I haven't read this, I know this to be true, so I think this will be a perfect book for that particular prompt. The next prompt is War and Peace. Read a book that is international for you, translated, author, setting from different country, etc. For this, I'm also doubling up on an earlier prompt, and I am picking Eugene Onegin by Alexander Pushkin. If you couldn't tell, it is a Russian book that takes place in Russia, and so this should be a perfect book for that particular prompt. If I have time, I do have another book I would like to read for that prompt, and it is called Letters en Cézanne by Rainer Maria Rilke. This particular book I want to read because I've heard nothing but good things about this author. I also want to read it because it's about the artist Cézanne. However abstract the connection may be, I think that'll be fascinating because I do love Cézanne and his art, so I think that'll be a really fun book to read. For Breakfast at Tiffany's, the next prompt, it says read a book featuring the friends to lovers trope. For this one, I chose a book that I discussed with Kara recently that inspired me to reread it. I love rereading books, especially at this time of year, and that book is Cotillion by Georgette Heyer. I have never read anything else by Georgette Heyer, so I don't know if I would recommend any of her other books, but I particularly loved this, and I read it about 5 years ago. It's very similar in a lot of ways to Jane Austen's books, and though it was written around the 1950s, I believe, it definitely has a lot of similarities because it's definitely a novel of manners. Freddie Standen is one of my favorite literary characters that I've ever encountered, which is saying quite a bit, and I would recommend this to anyone who wants a fun, quick book to read, and I'm excited to reread it. So Cotillion is all about a fake engagement between the main character Kitty, I had to remind myself what her name is, because she really wants this guy, Jack, to fall in love with her, and she thinks that a fake engagement is going to make him realize what he's missing. But she is also friends with the character Freddie Standen, the character that I love, and she starts to wonder if Jack is really the person that she wants to be with, and that's really just the premise of the story. And again, I don't want to say too much else because it'll ruin the story, but I love this one. The next prompt is The Children's Hour. Read a book featuring a female-female romance. For that, I chose the young adult book We Are Okay by Nina LaCour, or at least I think it's a young adult book. I don't really pay too much attention to genre sometimes, just because I feel like either you like the book or you don't. The genre or age group it's written for doesn't really factor in too much for me. Even though I've said in the past I don't generally tend to read YA that often, I've actually been reading a lot of it recently, so people change, you know? And I think this one will be a fantastic one. I've heard it's a really great story that deals with loss and self-discovery and all of those important things, and I'm excited to read this one. It has really fantastic ratings, so that one should be quite easy as well. I think it's only like maybe 300 pages long, so I'm excited for that one. The next prompt is My Fair Lady. Read a book featuring music or theater in some way. I have two books that I've chosen for this, and the first one, it'll take me a second to grab because it's huge. Some of you may recognize this from a previous video. This is My Riverside Shakespeare, and the book I've chosen to read, which is not necessarily a book, but is the play Richard III, which is one I've been meaning to read for a while, and if you've been watching my videos, you will know I've been trying to read more Shakespeare just in general because I just haven't read nearly as much as I feel like I ought to have, and I know Richard III is one that I'm particularly interested in, so I think that's a perfect response to this prompt. In addition, if I have some time, I want to pick this book up that I actually read part of for college, weirdly enough. I took a class on Stephen Sondheim, which was amazing. This book is called Art Isn't Easy, The Theater of Stephen Sondheim by Joanne Gordon. And as you can see here on the cover, this is a picture from Sunday in the Park with George, which is one of my favorite musicals. Pretty much anything by Stephen Sondheim is one of my favorite musicals. In each chapter, there's basically just information about all of the different musicals that Stephen Sondheim wrote. And I'm just a huge musical theater fan in general, and this is a very well-written book from what I remember having read of it. And I thought it would be cool to read a chapter a day. It's really not too difficult to read, so I think this will be a fun one if I can find the time. So we'll see what happens. The next prompt is How to Steal a Million. Steal a prompt from another readathon with credit or a book from someone else's TBR. I have been wanting to read this book ever since it came out, and I think it's going to be a fantastic read. And it is called Reading While Black, African American Biblical Interpretation as an Exercise in Hope by Esau McCaulley. This is the cover. And I purchased this one a couple of months ago, and it has been calling out to me on my shelf ever since. And this is just something that I think is going to be a fantastic read and very informative. And I love everything that I have read by this author previously. He's just a wonderful scholar and writer, and I think this is going to be an incredibly important read as well. This is on Kara's TBR, so I don't know that she's spoken about it before, but like I said, I've been wanting to read it so much that I'm stretching this prompt just a little bit so that I can fit this in. I think it's just going to be so powerful. And if you've been on my channel before, you will know I really enjoy reading Christian texts because I am Christian, so I do try my best to continue to have different texts within my reading schedule that are about different Christian issues. So I think this will be really important. The next prompt is Robin and Marian, read a retelling. For this, I've chosen Outlaws of Sherwood by Robin McKinley. This is a book that I started in, I think, high school, and I never finished it, and I don't know why, because usually I love everything I've ever read by Robin McKinley, and I also just love Robin Hood stories, so I thought this would be a really good time to pick this up. This cover is kind of a travesty, but, you know, again, I buy a lot of secondhand books, so this is part of the results of that. The next prompt is Wait Until Dark. Read something outside of your usual genres. For this one, I am doubling up, and that one is Black Sun by Rebecca Roanhorse. As I said before, science fiction is not a genre that I typically reach for, and that's because it's just not something I think about picking up very often, and I'm trying to change that by reading more just varied literature in general, so I think this is a perfect opportunity to do just that. The last prompt is Paris When It Sizzles. Read a lighthearted book. For this one, I'm doubling up and reading Cotillion as a response to that prompt. If I get some extra time, I'm going to hopefully be reading this book. It is called Sourdough, or Lois and Her Adventures in the Underground Market, a novel by Robin Sloan. This book was given to me by one of my pen pals, which if you are on Twitter at all, you may have seen this, but it is something called Pen Palooza, which is run by Rachel Syme, who writes for the New Yorker magazine. She started something where you basically get matched with different people to write letters to each other and be pen pals, and so I joined, and I have several pen pals, and one of them gave me this for my birthday, and I read the other book that she gave me already, and I want to go ahead and get into this one, and it says that it is basically a madcap and masterfully balanced take on what it means to be a person who eats food in the world today. Sourdough is a rollicking delight, which sounds to me like a lighthearted book. Anyway, thank you so much for watching my video. I know this was quite long, and I have had a lot of trouble filming this video because I keep saying things very strangely because I am just tired. School has taken it out of me, but I'm so excited to be taking part in this readathon, and I really hope you guys enjoy taking a part in it as well. Please again be sure to check out the channels of Kara and Taylor, and I will link any other relevant information below, as well as including a list of the books that I'm planning to read. And I hope you enjoy your week and you're having a wonderful start to your week, and I will talk to you guys and see you very soon. Bye!